Yes, ma'am. Mr. Davis,
Here.
Ms. Gallagher,
Here.
Mrs. Davis,
Here.
Dr. Yeager,
Here.
Dr. Dykeman, Dr. Anderson, Dr. Anderson, Dr. Gantt,
Here.
Attorney Hull,
Here.
and Dr. Maddox.
Here.
Okay, thank you. We have a quorum. We'll move forward and have a moment of silence. Thank you. Item number 2 on our agenda is our recognitions and awards. 2.1 recognitions. Dr. Thomas.
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Porter is present with us virtually this evening and is excited to make some presentations to some well-deserving individuals tonight. So I turn it over to Dr. Porter.
Lisa, do you have the PowerPoint to run, or should I share my screen?
I was not given a PowerPoint, so if you
No
don't
worries.
share your screen, that would be great.
You got it. All right, can everybody see that?
Not yet, Dr. Porter. There you go.
There you go.
Thank
Sorry
you.
about that. Thank you. All right, Dr. Thomas and board members, tonight we have the privilege of announcing the district level winners of the Young Georgia Authors Writing Competition. One of them, in fact, is moving on to the state level competition, and we'll get to that in just a moment. As many of you know, the Young Georgia Authors Writing Competition encourages students to develop an enthusiasm for and expertise in their writing, provide a context to celebrate their writing successes, and recognize student achievement in arts and academics. This prestigious competition, in fact, has been engaging Georgia students for over 2 decades. Let's get to this year's district level winners. In kindergarten, Roswell Lawrence, Whit Davis Elementary. First grade, Lily Everhart, Whit Davis. Second grade, Shepherd Bramlett, Chase Street Elementary. Third grade, Lila Vasant, Barrow Elementary. Fourth grade, Nola Bramlett, Chase Street Elementary. Fifth grade, Evelyn Faye Schinkelman, Barrow Elementary. Sixth grade, Michelle Molina, Bernie Harris Lyons Middle. Seventh grade, Ataya Thompson, Hoyle Middle. Eighth grade, Angie Umana, Hoyle Middle. Ninth grade, Anna Shaken, Clark Central High School. 11th grade, Emma Scott, Clark Central High. And 12th grade, Daniel Garcia Poza, Clark Central High School. Congratulations to all of these district level winners. And as I mentioned before, one was selected to move on as the regional winner of the Young Georgia Authors Competition. And that person is Emma Scott, the 11th grader at Clark Central High School. She won with her submission entitled Join Zoom Meeting. Obviously, we all understand and appreciate the timeliness of that topic. As the Northeast Georgia RESA winner, Emma's work now moves on to state level competition. Congratulations to Emma Scott and all the best moving forward. And again, congratulations to all the district level winners. This is also School Social Worker Week. At the heart of all our schools is a school social worker who cares deeply. These highly trained mental health professionals work hand in hand with staff to provide many needed services: counseling, crisis intervention, educating employees, and collaborating with community agencies. They listen, support, and provide hope each and every day. While you may not always see them in action, they are always there when needed to help pave the way to students' academic, social, and emotional success. Thanks to all of our social workers and all they do. We definitely are better together because of their compassion, dedication, and love that they give to all of our families and staff. The Mary Frances Early College of Education Mid-Career Alumni Award was announced, and this year one of the recipients is Mr. Andy Clemens, the award-winning needs specialist at Barrow Elementary. He was one of 7 graduates from the University of Georgia's Mary Frances Early College of Education to receive a 2020 Distinguished Alumni Award in recognition for his career achievements and community leadership. In her recommendation letter, Barrow Principal Dr. Ellen Sabatini said in part, quote, Mr. Clemens has made outstanding contributions to our school, our community, and the educational field. He spreads his passion for teaching and learning to his colleagues through ongoing collaborative projects in the Media Center, co-designing lessons that incorporate technology, literature, and other experiences. And he is a strong proponent of student voice and choice. He believes students should be involved in educational decisions and have choices about their learning and reading. Finally, Dr. Sabatini noted he shares the powerful things our students have to say with others around the world. Obviously, the University of Georgia agreed. Please join the Clark County School District in congratulating Mr. Clemens on this milestone achievement and thanking him for his support, again, of our students, families, and community. We are now at the point of our recognitions for our Employee of the Month, and I really enjoyed this one. The Employee of the Month for March is Technology Support Specialist Gary Venable. In support of his nomination, it was mentioned that within the district, Gary is a lot like those really famous celebrities who are instantly known by just one name. We think of Prince, Madonna, Sting, Beyonce, Zernona. Okay, I threw that last one in there. But when a lot of us hear the name Gary, we know who we're talking about. He may think we only think of him because we contact him when we have a problem. Nothing could be further from the truth. Because of his selfless dedication and utmost professionalism, we are indeed grateful for everything that he does for the staff and our community. No job is too big or too small for him. Gary also supports instruction. He knows and cares about our ability to reach and teach our students. Gary is absolutely an asset to the district. The Clark County School District congratulates Gary Venable, who's going to now be showered with gifts from generous sponsors to include a cash award from the Foundation for Excellence and other products and services from wonderful local businesses. In all, there's about $1,000 worth of goodies for the winner each month. We are most grateful for Andy and their ongoing support of all of our sponsors. Dr. Thomas, that now concludes the board recognition for this month. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Porter. I was so proud and excited. Love to see writing about Zoom. I think there will be a lot of future research around that topic in the future. And you're right, Gary is what we call him, and he always just pops up. He's kind of like a technology ninja. You put in a help desk ticket and he just shows up at the door within minutes. So we really do appreciate him, and we're very proud of Mr. Clemens for his work in the Clark County School District. And we've sent many thanks out to our school social workers. There's a huge card, Your Yard, from their leader, Ms. Crystal Gillis, at the front of the board office, recognizing them. So I thank them for all that they do for our district. As we wrap up our recognitions, I would like, and I have the pleasure of our very last one, and I, on behalf of the Clark County School District, our staff and our students, families, and our communities, I would like to say happy National School Boards Appreciation Week. That officially begins next week, but Clark County School District joins in the statewide celebration to salute the efforts of our local school board members. The week of March 15th through 19th has been proclaimed School Board Appreciation Week in Georgia. The week-long observance calls attention to the contributions of local boards of education. Our citizens elect you as our board members to represent the community's voice on education matters and to set the vision for the school district. Our board literally spends countless hours fulfilling its responsibilities and working together to continually improve our education system. As constitutional officers of Georgia, school board members are responsible for setting educational policies, employing the superintendent, providing buildings and equipment, operating our transportation system, and helping to disperse our school funds. As school leaders, school board members serve as advocates for the children in local public schools and must study, evaluate, and decide what actions we need to take in order to meet the best interest of all of our students. So once again, on behalf of the Clark County School District, I thank each of you for your service to our community and to the students of Athens, Clark County. We will have a small token for you. We had it planned for tonight, but since we aren't in person, we will have something for you when we come back together again. So thank you. Dr. Gantt, that concludes our recognitions for tonight.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Thomas, and certainly awesome to hear of all of those wonderful recognitions and the wonderful work that is taking place with our school district and amongst our students. We will move forward to item number 3, and this is to amend and or adopt the agenda. And Dr. Thomas, I'll defer to you briefly.
Yes, ma'am, Dr. Gantt. I would like to recommend that we amend our agenda for tonight to add 2 items. One is the acceptance of the Early Head Start Expansion Grant, and the second is acceptance to approve an action item to consider return to in-person board meetings.
Second.
Okay. Thank you. So that recommendation was made by Dr. Thomas. Did I hear a motion?
So moved.
Dr. Yeager.
Second.
So we have a motion by Dr. Yeager, a second by Dr. Maddox to add those 2 items, taking action on the Early Head Start grant, as well as taking action, considering and taking action on return to in-person, to adopting the agenda as amended in that manner. Dr. Thomas, if you would take roll for all of those in favor.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Ms. Gallagher,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Dr. Yeager,
Yes.
Dr. Dykeman, Dr. Anderson,
Yes.
Dr. Gantt, Dr. Gantt,
Oh, yes.
Attorney Hull,
Yes.
and Dr. Maddox.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, and so our agenda has been adopted with those modifications. So we will move forward with item 4.1. These are our public comments and emails from the public. And Ms. Palmer, if you can notify me or someone, if you can let me know when the 3 minutes.
I will.
Okay. So give me 1 second here. Okay. Our first letter is from Al Brown II, and it reads, "My name is Alfonso Brown, a parent of a child by the same name in CCSD. My concern is this asinine new math concept. First of all, it's not practical in the real world. Instead of teaching this math, teach kids how to balance checkbooks. I, as a former student of CCSD, say, you all failed me, instead of teaching me about the things I would need as an adult. If you all taught me interest rates, I wouldn't be in the situation I am in now. So as I ask as a former student, stop setting these kids up for failure in adult life. Because as an adult, I can't help my son with his math homework. Not because I can't do math. It's this calamity, new math, is why. I, along with many parents and teachers, feel it makes math, which is not easy for most people, harder. Math was one of my best subjects, yet you all have made it so where I can't do 4th grade math. Stop the nonsense, because every generation, the way things are taught are changes. Keep things the way they are now. Okay. Our second letter is from CCSD Parents for a Safe School, and it reads, as a local parent, I happily share that both of my children have received excellent educations in CCSD schools from pre-K on and up. One is in college now, and the other is a Cedar Shoals High School first year. I had little complaints until quite by accident, I discovered aspects of CCSD that made my hair stand on end. It is why I formed Parents for Safe Schools, along with other extremely concerned parents alarmed by CCSD's failure to prepare our schools for reopening with adequate safeguards, and for the astonishing lack of transparency around the lack of planning and execution of CDC's recommended measures for school reopenings. What do I mean by accidentally? It went something like this. I posted questions to my Cedar Shoals High School PTO Facebook page for parents to consider before completing their survey decision whether to send their kids back to school, such as what was being done at my kids' school about CDC reopening must-haves, like HVAC filtration testing and standards, air purification installation, and well-known benefit of providing outdoor seating for food service as well as teaching. I asked if anyone knew what was happening, as the CCSD reopening docs referred to these matters rather vaguely, and Cedar Shoals High School has some known HVAC issues. No answer. Then I emailed my principal and vice principal with the same result. And then I started getting the private IMs from teachers entrusting me with their stories of outdoor seating grants shot down, of repeated requests for air purifiers ignored, and most disturbing, a general sense of fear across the district of retribution by administrators that was so great they had been driven underground to host private informational meetings. They or rich parents have been buying picnic tables and air purifiers. What the heck? Is this Stalinist, Russian, or an American school district? Who are the Legos keeping information from Dr. Thomas? Through my Board of Education rep, I know she was upset by this news, and the teachers' emails are not getting to her. That is why we chose silence equals spread as our PFSS slogan and logo, an adaptation from the last plague, the AIDS epidemic, for present day pandemic use, to ask you to answer to this situation. An ombudsman should be set up immediately for teachers to submit stories without retribution, so you can root out this evil now. Sincerely, Lizzie Z. Saltz, CCSD parent. All right. Our next letter is from Jamie Howard Mays, and it reads, Dear CCSD Board and Cabinet, I was disappointed to hear that you would not be meeting in person tonight. It should be an absolute priority to hold the BOE to the same standard of risk that our children and teachers are stepping into every day. Please use the next month to find a way to also allow public comment to be read directly by stakeholders. I have been really concerned about all of the potential maskless time on campus, particularly during meal times for tweens and teens. This has been a concern that has also been shared with me by multiple teachers and parents in the district. I read an article this week that said a recent CDC morbidity and mortality weekly report tracked county level data from March 1st through December 31st of last year and found decreases in the growth rates of daily COVID-19 cases and deaths within 20 days after mask mandates were implemented. Analysis also found that growth rates began to increase 41 days after restrictions on premises restaurant dining were lifted. Knowing what we know about how teens and tweens are more likely to spread COVID-19 than elementary age kids, how can CCSD say that they're committed to safety in this pandemic when they're not guiding and leading schools to unilaterally create and use outdoor spaces for dining? Even if every adult on campus is vaccinated, when those middle and high school students remove their masks to eat, we should not be surprised when rampant and accelerated spread happens on our campuses. Given what we know, about how maskless dining indoors accelerates the spread of COVID-19, I believe it is bordering on negligent to not implement a district-wide plan or policy regarding children in our district eating their meals outdoors. Every school is different facilities, outdoor available spaces, and leadership styles, but the virus is the same. Every school that is allowing dining indoors is complicit in not only doing the very best for our children every day. As a district, this is not an area where autonomy should be afforded to the individual building leaders. Thank you in advance for your leadership on this issue. Thank you, Jamie Mays, parent in CCSD since 2011. All right. Our next letter is from Leslie James Sanders. My name is Leslie James Sanders, and I currently attend Cedar Shoals High School. While being stuck at home, listening to the news, constantly updating the global and nationwide death counts, we had to embrace this new normal. Months passed and thousands died while we were forced to stay home and social distance. There is no good reason for administering standardized tests, such as iReady and interims during virtual learning brought on by a global pandemic. The mental health of both students and teachers need to be prioritized. Having to be isolated for so long has made many feel trapped in negative thoughts now clouding their brains. Many students have lost motivation and struggle with procrastination, which cannot always be reduced to laziness. When you are so emotionally drained, getting up in the morning can be hard, let alone trying to complete schoolwork from morning to night. Eventually, being on Zoom becomes a seemingly endless routine that breaks you down. Having lost family members due to this virus or simply watching the death counts increase is enough to make you think about what really matters. Are you more worried about your grandfather on a ventilator in the hospital or finishing a standardized test for US history? Humans value family, but school and district administrators seem to value test scores more than anything else. How can something so uniform as a standardized multiple choice test be used to judge a developing child's ability level? After a semester teaching a group of students, the teacher knows their capabilities better than a machine. The pressure of taking a test that you are told will reflect how intelligent you are can take a toll on your performance. This fear of failing can cause a student to freeze up and run out of time or seemingly forget what they've learned. And when stress becomes overwhelming, the brain shifts into fight or flight response, where it is impossible to engage in the higher order thinking processes that are necessary to respond correctly to the standardized test questions. And that's from 15 Reasons Why Standardized Tests Are Problematic. School has always been an institution where students are expected to only worry about their education and focus on their studies. However, due to this pandemic, two worlds are colliding, school and home life, and students are forced to face a mix of distractions and obligations. Some students are expected to take care of their siblings when they're home, or their environment may be loud and distracting. With both sides of their life being forcefully sewn together, they are overwhelmed. The pressure to test well only increases stress levels. This pandemic has been an entirely new, hard experience for everyone, and we've tried to establish some kind of routine and normalcy throughout it. However, we need to take a second to consider the mental health of students and teachers. In an effort to reduce the burden placed on teachers and students, all standardized testing should be suspended for the remainder of this school year. During a pandemic, things are hard enough, so why make it harder by applying new pressure and stress on students with standardized testing?
Dr. Gantt, I'm sorry, 3 minutes are up.
Okay, let me just finish this sentence. Due to this very aspect of education in a school system where we're supposed to find ourselves, more often we end up losing our humanity. Okay. And our last letter, at least what I have, Ms. Palmer, it was 5 letters total, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So this is our last letter from Vicki McMakin, and it reads, Dear Dr. Thomas and the board, first, I was happy to hear substantive conversation regarding ventilation and air filtration during your last work session. I really appreciated John Gilbreth discussing in detail the specifics of the issues the community has been asking about since October, and hope you will communicate clearly the district plans to increase ventilation and air filtration in CCSD classrooms soon. I am writing today regarding the CCSD students eating breakfast and lunch daily in their classrooms. As you are very likely aware, the CDC published a study, Clusters of SARS-CoV-2 Infection among elementary school educators and students in one school district, Georgia, December 2020 through January 2021 on February the 22nd. The study details spread of COVID in elementary schools and specifically points to the importance of physical distancing of students, especially during meals when masks are not worn, and suggests that eating in classrooms could contribute to spread. And there is a link, a CDC link there. Last Friday, the CDC released another study focused on the association of indoor dining with COVID case rates and associated deaths. Although this study focused on restaurants, they are basically saying eating inside without masks in spaces where 6 feet of physical distance cannot easily be maintained contributes to the spread of the disease. And there's another CDC link. Finally, the CCSD reopening Q&A, which is posted on the CCSD website, states that social distancing during meal times is essential. And there is a link to that Q&A. Given this widely available information, why are CCSD schools planning for students to eat breakfast and lunch in their classrooms? Meal times when students must remove their masks to eat are the most likely time for COVID to spread from one student to another within schools. Furthermore, some CCSD schools are seating students in pods where desks are pushed directly next to each other with no physical distance between students. While plexiglass can be a visual cue to students to maintain personal space and can prevent large droplet transmission through coughing, sneezing, and spitting, they cannot prevent the aerosolized virus particles from circulating in the air and certainly do not make eating in classrooms safe. Can eating in classrooms be avoided while we are still in the midst of the pandemic, especially when 6 feet of distance between students cannot be assured? Please ensure that CCSD students consistently eat in larger, ideally outdoor locations where they can spread out and stay socially distanced when their masks are off. Thank you for your service to CCSD. Ms. Vicki McMakin, CCSD parent. And those are all of our letters. All right. So we will move forward with item number 5, and these are our Board of Education Committee reports. 5.1, Government Relations. Mr. Davis. Is Mr. Davis with us?
I'm sorry. When the Government Relations Committee met this month, we covered the legislative agenda, and that's what we discussed, and that's on the agenda for vote later this evening.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Davis. Policy Committee, Dr. Yeager.
Thought I unmuted, but I didn't. Thank you, Dr. Gantt. We have a large number of I policies to approve to put up for comment today. We worked through those in the work session. I've also included my notes for all of those policies in my committee report. So if you haven't had a chance to look through them, it's in the committee report. The other items I wanted to mention that we're working on in policy committee is we do have a plan to address the changes to the committee structure. And also included in my report is the very much drafted, proposed changes to the committee structure. And we will be discussing those at our next policy committee meeting on March 18th. So please get your feedback to me or any other member of the policy committee before that date. So your views will be incorporated into the plan that's moved forward, and we can get your ideas incorporated rather than wait until the work session. And then finally, we'll be finishing up. I included a report addition Just recently, I think Ms. Palmer put it up, is just kind of a heads up of what's coming next week or on the 18th, is to finish up the I policies with Mr. Gaskins. And then we'll be done with those. And then I think we'll be able to move on to the J policies with Dr. Watley in April. And that's all I have for my report. All those documents should be up on the board docs.
Thank you. Property Committee, Ms. Davis?
Yes, the property committee did meet this month, and we will not have minutes because it was an executive session meeting. So we will have just the notification that we did have that meeting. But I did ask, because of that executive session experience, our board members to please complete a short survey that I sent, and it is on Google Docs. If you did not get a chance to do that, please answer 3 short questions so that we can make improvements in how we handle our discussions about property. So thank you.
Okay. Whoops. Thank you. Finance Committee, Ms. Davis?
Yes, the Finance Committee met this last month. We will meet again this month on the 25th. That's our standing 4th Thursday meeting. We had a long discussion. Those minutes will be circulated to the board and also posted probably for our next work session meeting. We do have, though, a report coming up soon from the auditors. They completed the report, and so we'll be meeting with them to go over those results. And I think it's a very favorable report, so I think we'll all be happy about that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And that meeting is tomorrow, right? Ms. Davis and Dr. Thomas, Mr. Schoeneman?
It is tomorrow.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. We'll move forward with the board president's remarks. I don't have any additional remarks that would be significantly different than last week. Okay. Dr. Thomas, item 7, the superintendent's report.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Dr. Gantt. And my report is very short. I just wanted to share that we had an amazing day 1 of vaccinations. For those of you who participated, volunteered at either of our schools at Clark Central or Cedar Shoals, I hope that you had the same experience that I did. It was an amazing day. It was ran very efficiently, and everyone was cordial. And I think the highest compliment that we could have received was when someone said that there was Chick-fil-A level service and organization. So you can't beat the Chick-fil-A standard of excellence. So that was really exciting. You could tell that everyone was very appreciative of the efforts of our team in being there. We had approximately almost 1,300 people sign up initially, and then additional individuals came in requesting with emails after the deadline, and they were accommodated. And then also not in those numbers are those individuals who received the shot prior to our vaccination efforts due to their age or being caretakers for family members. So we won't have that in our total, but we are working to get a total of how many came through our clinic yesterday. That team effort was led by Nurse Amy Rourke, Dr. Jillian Watley, Ms. Meredith Paget stepped in and did a lot of the pre-work with her, not to mention our principal supervisors. And then we have had countless CCSD staff volunteers who were out directing outdoor traffic, inside traffic, checking on people after they received their vaccines. We've had tons of individuals to date entering data into the GRID system. So it was a massive undertaking, but you never would have known when you saw it how much effort that went into it. We also are very appreciative of the Department of Public Health, Augusta University, and UGA for their medical students and physicians who worked with us to ensure that we had everything that we needed. Both high schools were very accommodating. So it was just truly an exciting day in Clark County, and we were thrilled to be able to provide that service to our school community and to do it in a way that moved very quickly. I mean, you were in, you were vaccinated, you had your 15 minutes of waiting. They checked on you consistently. Our nurses were going around, are you okay? Do you need anything? So I was just really proud. Hate to use an old phrase, but I was really proud to be CCSD yesterday. And we truly are better together because it was a lot of people that came together to make that happen. So that is the end of my report.
That's encouraging. I like that. Thank you.
Thank you for those updates, and definitely thank you to our Clark County School District team for your massive efforts, as well as community partners. We'll move forward with the financial report. Dr. Thomas and Mr. Schooneman.
Yes, Mr. Schooneman presented our financial report last week. So at this time, he's prepared to entertain any additional questions that anyone might have. And if there are no questions or additions from him, it's my recommendation that the financial report be accepted as presented.
And Dr. Thomas, since last week, there's been no significant updates. So I'm fine with just entertaining questions.
Thank you, Mr. Schooneman.
I move that we adopt.
Mr. Schooneman,
I've got a question. I have a question.
was that Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes. I just wanted to ask Mr. Schooneman, you had mentioned something last week about, perhaps using the fund balance to somehow impact the level of the mill rate. And I just wanted to trying to figure out how all the pieces fit together, because I want to make sure that we are able to address the needs of the district that perhaps we have not been able to address because we have not had the funds. And so I just don't know in terms of coming together with the budget. Presumably that will come up first, and then looking at those numbers, then we would look at what monies are currently available based on the mill rate, and whether or not that could be lowered. Am I right in understanding the process?
We are kind of in a 7th inning stretch, so really finalizing some of those revenue estimates, and then also finalizing the salary and benefit estimates for next year. And really within the next 2 weeks or so, we are really going to narrow in on kind of those final estimates and final numbers, and see how all of those pieces of the puzzles fit together. But as I expressed during the work session, that is something that we're entertaining, just because of the fund balance additions that we've had over the last few years, to roll back the tax rate, just to kind of alleviate CCSD from accumulating more than, we've set that threshold at 15%. We don't want to go below it, but we also don't want to go too high as a taxing authority. So that will be a discussion once all the pieces of the puzzle are fit together. Really, the time frame for us to look at that and y'all to discuss it as a board and provide feedback for us is after I'll share it with the finance committee later on this month, and then we'll really dig into it in April.
Okay, I guess my question is, and maybe it's to Dr. Thomas as well, if board members have particular concerns about particular areas of Clark County School District that we individually maybe feel like have not been fully addressed, but we haven't raised them because, being aware that there are limits to what a school district can fund. I mean, that funds are finite. based on what Mr. Schuneman's saying, is how do we, Dr. Thomas, how can individual board members communicate their concerns about, not, I wouldn't say concerns, but I would say things that over the period of time that perhaps have not been addressed because the funds were not there.
So, Mr. Davis, like with any other of our discussions, I'm always available by phone, email, text. I would prefer, to probably engage in verbal conversation because I think a lot can get lost in interpretation and understanding with emails, but I'm always available to have those conversations. And then those conversations have to be considered like the conversations we're also having with individual cabinet members who are representing their different departments. How does that fit into our strategic plan? How does that align with our strategic priorities? How does that align with our efforts to increase student achievement? And then when we get to the point of looking at those budget recommendations, we will vet all of those suggestions by a set criteria, and that information, as always, will come back to you all as a board for ultimate approval of the budget.
Another avenue could be to also share those with the finance committee, and we can make sure that they become a part of our agenda as well, Mr. Davis.
Okay. Additional questions?
Thank you.
Okay. So, Dr. Thomas, it's my understanding that there's a recommendation. I'm going to open the floor for a motion.
So moved.
Was that Ms. Gallagher?
Nicole.
Okay, Ms. Hull made a motion.
I'll second.
Ms. Gallagher seconded the motion. Just for the record, is there any further discussion or additional questions? Okay, Dr. Thomas, if you would take roll for all of those in favor of adopting the financial report.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Ms. Gallagher,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Dr. Yeager,
Yes.
Dr. Dykeman, Dr. Anderson,
Yes.
Dr. Gantt,
Yes.
Attorney Hull,
Yes.
Dr. Maddox.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, so that motion passes. Our financial report has been adopted. We will move forward with item 9. And these are our policies and regulations or exhibits to be posted for 4 weeks for public comments. Dr. Yeager, we have items 9.1 through 9.4. And Dr. Yeager, I'm gonna just turn the floor over to you if is there any additional information that we should be aware of?
No additional information, just that we agreed to put the first 22 policies into one item. So there are 22 I policies that we worked through at the work session last week that I think we wanted to vote on as one. And then it seemed to be that there was some interest in looking individually at the other 3 policies and voting on them separately and having perhaps a little bit of more discussion about them.
Okay.
So I would make a motion to approve 9.1
Okay.
first.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Davis. For the record, any additional questions or discussion? Dr. Thomas, if you would take roll for all of those in favor of adopting the policies that are listed, or the policies and actions that are listed in 9.1.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Ms. Gallagher,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
These are going out for public comment, right?
Yes,
We're not adopting. Is that right?
right.
Yes.
Okay, yes.
Dr. Yeager,
Yes.
Dr. Dykeman, Dr. Anderson,
Yes.
Dr. Gantt,
Yes.
Attorney Hull,
Yes.
Dr. Maddox.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. We'll move forward with, or to 9.2, and this is policy DJE, the purchasing review. And I'll just, have there been any additional updates or things that have been shared with you, Dr. Yeager, or are there any additional comments or points of discussion before I open the floor for a motion?
So I would suggest that we put 9.2 and 9.3 together as one motion, since they are the same issue, which is, are we going to leave the 80,000 limit in place, or did we want to change that? And so I guess I would move that we accept both of these to put up for public comment, based on what I've heard from the work session, and then let the community let us know what they think of that. But I
Okay,
have
so,
no additional information since last week.
okay, so if I understand you, you have a motion to adopt or put for public comment policy DJE and then the regulation DJE. So that would be 9.2 and 9.3.
Yes.
A motion has been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, was that Ms. Davis?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Is additional questions and discussion about these two items?
Call the mothers.
I will,
They were black.
Is that someone that has a question?
I was gonna have a discussion.
Okay, Mr. Davis?
Yeah, I just, again, and I won't belabor the point. I just feel like that this is something that has this particular amount of 80,000. Having been on the board for 6 years or so, I was there when it was increased, and I do feel like it has tripped us up in the last few years. Certainly, my trust of Dr. Thomas is explicit, just out of this world. But again, I look at policy as something that would apply to all those that follow, and so I do feel like, even though I supported at one time the raising the limit of 80,000 without board approval, I now have come to regret that. I'm also a little bit not confused, but I'm concerned also about the multi-year contract provisions that are in the regs. And because that was another item that kind of tripped us up. And so I just, I feel like that 80,000 for, if someone were to tease out the language to deal directly with ongoing operations of our facilities, I have no problem with that. Where my issue comes in is, because it mentions labor, and of course, it's in the regs, it specifies as computer systems, consulting and professional services, design, building, and design, building, construction projects. And I think that those are types of things that the board would like to have a vote on. I do not think it would become unduly burdensome on the board to vote on policies of a much lower amount. I mean, proposals of a much lower amount. And while I understand that the Finance Committee will be privy to much discussion on finances, that's not going to cover the entire board. And so, again, I would like to call upon my fellow board members to consider lowering that amount for those reasons. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Davis. Other comments?
Yes, I would like to, I'm sorry, did I cut someone off?
No, go ahead, please.
I would like to get some input from Dr. Thomas. I mean, I think if we're looking at what she would be able to spend and wanting her to be able to discharge her duties as superintendent and oversee the administration of the district, I would want some input as to what she will feel would be a doable limit, the best limit for her.
Thank you, Mrs. Hull. When we spoke about this last month, Mr. Schooneman had reached out to CFOs in other districts and had researched for us what's a kind of normal or average limit. And at that point, we had said $50,000. However, Mr. Schooneman, is there a kind of a bottom amount that would cause it to be inhibitive for us to do the daily work of the district? Is that 50 kind of that threshold to you, or is there a lower amount?
I think what we did last week, which was helpful, is stratify those invoices and just look to see, between $50,000 and $80,000, how many invoices did we actually pay that would be caught up in needing the extra level of approval. If I remember correctly, this year so far, I think we've had maybe 20 invoices that we paid that have fallen between that $50,000 and $80,000 level that would have to go to the board. So to me, that's the decision that you got to make is, okay, the additional work would be us bringing about, at this point in the fiscal year, 20 additional items to be approved. So really, in my opinion, once you go below 50, I feel like if we can do that analysis again and stratify how many invoices you're looking at, I'll be happy to provide that analysis once again. I mean, it'll take me probably just a few minutes to look up, but as you go lower, those numbers grow quite quickly. So I think $50,000 is a good kind of compromise. If they'd like to go lower, that's probably something that I'd throw out there as a recommendation.
Thank you.
Okay, additional comments?
So I've provided my additional comments last week, and I don't want us to belabor this, but I do want to reiterate that, again, that study was done when we set this limit at 80,000. And so we repeat the study, maybe things change, maybe they don't change. But the issue is not the $80,000 limit. The issue was one of trust, or feeling like trust was abused in not reporting to the board. Well, that was a miscarriage on our part in not having the accountability structure in place, because even though the approval level is $80,000, every expenditure is still supposed to be reported to the board. The board did not receive that report, and I think that is why we're at this place. Changing and lowering the limit does not alter that. And so I think the right thing to do is to make sure, and we have made sure that we have that policy in place, and that is enumerated, and I can't remember the policies, one of the board policies where that's there. We have in finance come up with a reporting solution so that Mr. Schooneman will now be reporting all of those expenditures to the board, not just the finance committee. And that would be the opportunity to have that. What's concerning to me is when we talk about professional services, and I think the nature of the professional services that were hired without board consent and within the legal limits of the contract were personal in terms of professional development. I don't think the board weighs in on professional development expenditures for a superintendent. That's the superintendent's decision about where that should go. And so I would be careful as we start looking at contracts, and especially those that involve the things that we gave the superintendent latitude to do in our contract with him. So again, I just think we might be applying the wrong solution to a problem that no longer exists.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Davis. Are there any additional comments before we move forward and take roll on the motion that's on the floor?
I won't repeat my comments from last week, but I would like to say I also just remember what I stated, and it's not.
I'm sorry. Hold on one second, Dr.
Okay.
Can everybody mute themselves?
What is it?
Except Dr. Maddox. Okay. Okay, go ahead.
It might have been a baby on this side.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I do think that 50,000 is a fair amount, and I think it's not just about distrust, but it's about having accountability. I'm glad that we are now, doing what we should have done last year, and I'm ready to move forward. I'm not going to go back and forth, but I'm just glad that we're moving forward. And I'll just leave it at that. But I do agree with Mr. Davis.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Maddox. Any additional comments or discussion?
There is one. I wanted to make sure everybody had a chance to talk, but Mr. Schumann mentioned a report from the 50 to 80,000 list of 20. I haven't seen that. Was that shared with the Finance Committee?
I haven't produced that report specifically, but what I have done every month is provide all of the invoices that have been paid. And I think just the sheer number of them is kind of overwhelming and doesn't necessarily address the spirit of why you guys want to see those invoices. And so what I offer to do is just narrow down the dollar frame of those invoices that you see. So instead of seeing ones that are a penny, it would be let's say 10,000 and up, or 50,000 and up. So I think what's in the board policy is 10,000 and up. So I'd be able to do that easily each month, and it would be probably a one-pager PDF that I could put together for you.
Okay, the reason I'm asking that is I'm sorry, Patricia, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish your thought, and then I have a.
I mean, when I looked at that list, and I forget who sent it to me. This was a couple of years ago, Mr. Schumann. So it probably was our previous CFO, but I did not find nearly that many, even over 10,000. And so I'm just curious now. One thing that I did see was things like contracts for bug extermination, for instance. And again, I don't know if the possibility is there, but in terms of teasing out what types of contracts or proposals or agreements that are made between the superintendent and private parties. And Ms. Davis actually kind of addressed, the elephant in the room, but I don't reach her same conclusion, and so I guess I feel like that we need to study this more and actually look at what, even over the past year, what has been needed, what purchases were being made at large dollar amounts, and whether or not there's any way to separate those that are dealing with ongoing maintenance of buildings and things like that versus other topics.
If I may move us along and just say, I definitely understand the importance of continuing to discuss this, but I'm going to encourage us to make a decision. We've talked about this in policy, we've discussed it in work session, and we're bringing it forward tonight. And regardless of what that decision is, if it's to put it out for 4 weeks, if it's to take it back to policy, but I don't want this, at some point we'll need to come to some type of conclusion with this. And we're starting to talk about, we're sharing some of our same comments that we all have shared. And so I want to sort of encourage us to make a decision if we're going to move forward or not. Dr. Yeager, I think I saw your hand up, and I want to be sure that there are no other questions or comments from others who haven't spoken.
I was just going to suggest, so given that both of this policy and this reg were last reviewed less than 2 years ago, these are not two of the ones that really need a new timestamp. They're not one of the ones that needed to be fixed because they're out of date. So I would recommend that we ask for public comment, but maybe not through this process, that we just pull them for now. We spend some time looking over Mr. Schindemann's reports, maybe 6 months, and then we think about this issue again. Hopefully the 6 months will go by and we'll be able to see what kind of expenses we're talking about, and then make a decision, next year or later this year, whichever people want to do. But I would still encourage the public who might be watching this tonight to let us know what they're comfortable with, so that we have some public input. Either that or we put them up for public comments and then we pull them down a month from now. Either way, I'm good with whichever people want to do.
Okay, so right now we have a motion on the floor. The motion on the floor is that we move these up for public comment. Dr. Yeager, if I'm understanding you, those are two separate motions. I think one is the one that stands, and I think I heard you say an amendment, but it sounded like it was something totally different.
I think if this fails, if people vote no to move this up, then we move it, we look at it 6 months from now after we get 6 months worth of these reports from Mr. Schinneman. That would be my approach anyway.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Are there any additional, is there any additional discussion, concerns from individuals that haven't spoken? Okay. All right, Dr. Thomas, if you would take roll on the motion for DJE, policy DJE, and regulation DJE to be moved forward to public comment, and just for some additional context from what Dr. Yeager said, if the motion fails, then her approach with policy would be to gather more information and look more closely as a board at this.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Davis?
No.
Ms. Gallagher?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Dr. Yeager?
Yes.
Dr. Dykeman? Dr. Anderson?
Yes.
Dr. Gantt?
Yes.
Attorney Hall?
Yes, sorry.
It's okay. And Dr. Maddox?
Yes.
Okay. So that motion passes. Those two items will be placed for public comment. And then just another note for context, it sounds like Mr. Schooneman will also be providing a more detailed report of those like invoices and payments that go above a particular amount. So he'll be providing us with some additional information. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so if we can just, well, I know we have our regular notes, but if we can make note of that, and then as well as Finance Committee, that would have implications for Finance Committee as well. We'll move forward with item number 9.4. This is policy IGB, our student supports teams. Dr. Yeager, was there any additional information, any additional feedback that we need to consider before taking a vote?
I have not heard anything or any questions from anyone. I think this was just a very long revision and people wanted to make sure they had time to review it. As is mentioned in the attorney's memo, this is basically a verbatim restatement of a Georgia law. And so that's all we've done is remove some of the outdated information and replace it with the new law. But I know people wanted to review it. I didn't think we had any questions about it, just people wanted to look it over and vote separately.
Okay. All right. So the floor is, well, were there any questions that individuals had as you went back and read over the policy IGB? Okay. I'm going to open the floor for a motion.
I moved it. Oh, sorry. Dr. Maddox made a motion to approve, I guess, to move it forward, and I'll second it.
Okay, Dr. Maddox made the motion. Dr. Yeager seconded the motion. For the record, any additional questions or discussion?
I've got one, Madam President.
Yes, Mr. Davis.
in looking at this, and I know we're coming right out of state law, I didn't see an interpreter, and where they list a whole lot of positions that would be part of the SST potentially, but I did not see an interpreter included. And I know I see the ESOL teacher, but not all ESOL teachers are bilingual, and so I'm just wondering if that's something that should be covered in this policy, making sure that we are providing discussions in the language that is that the parent prefers, or is that elsewhere? Or is that in another policy?
I would ask Mr. Gaskins to address that.
So it is not a part of our policy, Mr. Davis. It is a part of our practice. In SST meetings, student support team meetings, as well as IEP meetings, before we schedule those meetings, we do reach out to parents to see if they will need a translator. So that is a part of our practice. We could put it in our policy, but that is what we are currently doing.
Mr. Gaskins, I know in other districts, there's been a telephone service where people can dial into it and kind of get some interpreter translation services. Is that something that Clark County utilizes?
Yes, it is called Language Line. We started utilizing it this year. We've had a lot of success with it, especially with parent-teacher conferences.
Thank you.
Okay. Any additional questions?
Can I have a follow-up? I don't want to speak out of turn. If somebody else has something, but.
Well, I want to encourage us to move. Well, so one of the things I encouraged us to do was to reach out to Dr. Yeager or policy or the board if these were questions that we had from our work session. So I'm trying to balance. I definitely want to create time where we, I know that we don't think of all of our questions at one time, but I also want to prevent us from belaboring the point and having repetitive conversations. But Mr. Davis, yes, what's your question?
Yeah, I didn't know that's what we were doing. I thought we pulled them for discussion. So I'm sorry.
We did, but I think the expectation as well. I mean, I certainly understand that not all discussion can happen before tonight, but certainly if there are questions, informational questions that can be answered, it would be helpful for those questions to be shared with the board or the policy, so that we can all be better prepared to answer them. But what's your question, Mr. Davis?
I would just, what I would like to do is when we talk about equity, I think equity is something that should be kind of permeated throughout our policies, and not. I know we have a policy that covers equity specifically, but I think this would be an example of to write something into a policy to ensure equity. I don't think that's a bad thing. So that's why I would like to either make a friendly amendment to include what Mr. Gaskins says is practice, and to raise that to the level of policy. So that would be my amendment.
Am I allowed to speak, Dr. Gantt? I'm sorry, Attorney Hull. Do you want to go first?
Oh, go ahead.
No, and my only question or caution would be how far does that equity conversation extend, and how far do we go? I'm not against that. And Mr. Gaskins, Attorney Hull asked about Language Line. We have used Language Line in Clark County. I know for years. We were using it when I came back in 2009. But if we're going to put, let's just say, Language Line in there, are we also going to put something about transportation or something for families who are homeless and happen to live outside of our zone, and how do we get them there? And if we're going to put that, which I'm fine with, but I don't want us to isolate equity to one group, because there are multiple groups that everyone deserves an opportunity to receive equitable treatment and service. So when we're talking about how we support families and supporting children in these educational settings, I want us to be inclusive of all of the needs of many of our families who might have challenges that extend beyond language. And I'm language sensitive. I mean, I was at the school that was 67% Hispanic, so I don't want to be misquoted on that, but that's not the only area of need we have in Clark County. So once we start being very specific about what we're doing for a group, I think we need to then be very specific for what we do for all groups, and I don't know how we do that. So that's just my only caution. Sometimes we can, if we're not careful, we focus on or perseverate on one particular area, and there are many populations in our community that need special assistance in order to be able to access the programming that they deserve for their children.
I guess my question would be, before we move forward, and I don't know if this would be to Mr. Gaskins, Dr. Thomas, or even Attorney Pruitt, but if we were to amend this to put an interpreter or a translator, does that open us up to any type of liability if an interpreter or a translator for that particular language cannot be found? Say it's something that's not as common as Spanish, but is something else. Does that leave us open to liability because we have a policy now that requires a person to participate that we cannot find but may be accessible via the language line or some other service like that?
Potentially, because once you put it in policy, it could become a ministerial duty that's an exception to immunity. So I think all of this suggests that, as much as we agonize over individual words in a lot of policies, this is a pretty big amendment to make sort of on the fly without having the wording sorted out for the reason you raise, among others.
Thank you.
So I would just note that the policy reads at the moment, the SST shall include at a minimum the referring teacher and at least 2 of the following participants as appropriate to the needs of the student. And it's a list of 12, number 12 of which is other appropriate personnel. So I would assume in the case of a family that needed a translator that would be in the other appropriate personnel. But I think also if we added another number that said translator if needed, it would be potentially one of the 2, but it wouldn't obligate us, I don't think, in the way that Attorney Hall just described. I don't think, but you're right. We probably should think about this before we make the amendment.
Yeah, I just want to add, this is Dr. Watley. When we're talking about SST, that is the pre-referral process before a child may go to special education, right? And so sometimes during those meetings, there are times where consent is signed. And there's a difference between consent and informed consent. And the piece that I think I'm most concerned about is informed consent, because if it is not in the child's or the parent's dominant language and they do not understand what they are signing, then therein lies an issue on special education side. So I do think this is a conversation that needs to be had a little bit deeper, because the implications far reach beyond the student support services team.
Yes.
Because of the paperwork that starts on the student services team that informs special education.
So are you saying you wanted to add then a number 13 that includes translator if needed? So you would support that?
I would support it because I know that, while special education and student services are separate, some of those forms happen at the student services side before those kids are referred. So for example, consent to evaluate a student, that's happening at the tier 3 level. That's not special education as of yet. Otherwise, we would be predetermining a child in eligibility for special education. So it has to happen on the student services side.
So we may want to talk about this and more, because this is the student support team policy, which defines the team and who's included in that team, and not the process part of it. Although I agree with Dr. Watley, and I'm not as knowledgeable as I need about the other policies that may exist in another policy. And then the other thing that I would just add, the last time that this was reviewed was in 2002. And so partly the reason that we're updating it, not because we've had an issue in practice, but it is outdated. And then the other thing that I would add is that we did not create this from scratch. We have added what we thought was appropriate to inform the community from the state policy. So we're still following state policy, and we've enhanced our current policy to include those definitions. So I would just say that if we are going to add anything, that we might need to pull this and have a deeper conversation at policy, which would include Dr. Watley and myself, because this just defines the team and the purpose of the team and doesn't get to the process.
May I ask a quick question? Is this only for students with special needs? Or is this for all students?
This is all students. This is not a special needs policy. This talks about when students are experiencing academic or behavior concerns, that we assemble a team that talks about those concerns and then puts interventions in place to support those concerns. That doesn't mean that a student is going to be referred to special education. Hopefully those interventions work, and then the student continues to receive their tier 1 instruction or whatever the tier 1 behavior supports that are in place at the school level.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. We have a second. We have some discussion, some questions about clarification, some suggestions. Do we need to take a vote on the action? Is there a substitute motion? We probably need to move forward.
So this is one that we're putting out for public comment. Is that correct?
That's
right.
correct.
I'm good for that. I think that's where we need to go with this. I think if we have an issue with a policy that doesn't address equity across the board, I think that's work for the policy committee, because I think it would affect more than just this.
Yeah, and I just pasted LEBA Reg 1 into the chat that talks about providing translators whenever necessary when communicating with parents. So Mr. Davis, I think we have that policy covered. I mean, we can add it to this one if you want, but I think for now, Mr. Gaskin's point that this policy is very, very, very outdated, and if we are not policy, and we probably need to update this policy as soon as possible.
All right. Let's see. Okay. Well, if there are no additional questions and comments, just looking through to be sure I don't see any hands.
Will you please repeat the motion if we're going to vote on it?
The motion is to move IGB, the student support team's revisions, for public comment.
Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Thomas, if you would take roll for all of those in favor.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Davis,
No.
Ms. Gallagher,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Dr. Yeager,
Yes.
Dr. Dykeman, Dr. Anderson,
Yes.
Dr. Gantt,
Yes.
Attorney Hull,
Yes.
Dr. Maddox.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so that motion passes. Policy IGB will be moved forward to public comment. We'll move forward to number 10. These are our policies to be adopted, rescinded, or revised, and these were packaged after discussion last week as one item. So 10.1 These are all of our policies. Dr. Yeager, have there been any updates, feedback from board members, or any additional feedback?
No, maybe Mr. Thomas, I think the public comment is closed at the work session, so there has been no additional public comment, although certainly they could email me if they're concerned, but there has been no public comment on any of these policies.
Okay. Oh, go ahead.
No, that's fine.
Okay, so the floor is open for a motion.
I so move.
Second.
That was Ms. Davis and Mr. Davis. Are there any additional questions or clarification needed about any of the policies that are listed here? Okay. Dr. Thomas, if you would take roll for all of those in favor of taking the noted action on the policies that are listed in 10.1.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Ms. Gallagher,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Dr. Yeager,
Yes.
Dr. Dykeman, Dr. Anderson,
Yes.
Dr. Gantt,
Yes.
Attorney Hull,
Yes.
Dr. Maddox.
Yes.
Okay, so that motion passes. We'll move forward to item 11. These are our personnel reports. Item 11.1 is the March 2021 Personnel Board Report, and March 2021, item 11.2 is the March 2021 contract list. Dr. Thomas?
Yes, ma'am. It would be my recommendation that the board accept the personnel list for the board report, as well as the most current contract list as provided last week.
So moved.
Okay, so we have a recommendation and a motion by Ms. Davis. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, second by Dr. Yeager. Any questions? Okay, Dr. Thomas, if you would take roll for all of those in favor of accepting or adopting the March 2021 Personnel Board Report, which is item 11.1, and item 11.2, the March 2021 contract list.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Ms. Gallagher,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Dr. Yeager,
Yes.
Dr. Dykeman, Dr. Anderson, Dr. Anderson,
Yes.
Dr. Gantt,
Yes.
Attorney Hull,
Yes.
and Dr. Maddox.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So that motion passes as well. Item 12, our consent agenda. In our consent agenda, we have item 12.1. This is the approval of February 4th, 2021 work session minutes. Item 12.2, the approval of the February 11th, 2021 board meeting minutes. And item 12.3, this is the approval purchase of one Freightliner M2-106 refrigerated box truck. The floor is open for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, was that Ms. Hull and Dr. Maddox?
Yes.
All right, so this is our consent agenda. So we'll be voting on all of these at the same time. Dr. Thomas, if you would take roll.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Ms. Gallagher,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Dr. Yeager,
Yes.
Dr. Dykeman, Dr. Anderson,
Yes.
Dr. Gantt,
Yes.
Attorney Hull,
Yes.
and Dr. Maddox.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll move forward to number 13, and these are different action items. So 13.1, this is the action to approve construction manager at-risk contract for the board office renovation project at 595 Prince Avenue.
I move that we approve the CMR contract.
Second.
Okay, Dr. Yeager, you made the motion, and was that Ms. Hull for the second?
Yes.
Okay, any additional questions?
I've got one, Madam President. Would this be based on our previous discussion, and maybe there's some confusion on my part, which would not be the first time, but would this be something that would not necessarily have to come to the board for a vote? I'm trying to understand what does come before the vote for a vote and what doesn't.
Yeah, this would exceed the $80,000 limit, so you would need to vote on it. And whenever we go into contracts of this nature, the board votes on it.
But if I'm reading this correctly, we're talking about 14,000, aren't we?
No, it's 600,000.
Okay, where am I missing? I'm missing something. Well, I'm at the public content.
Right. If you subtract those two numbers, the 14 million and 13 million, it'll come up to 660.
Oh, those are million. Oh man, that's mega bucks. I'm sorry.
Right. This is based off of a budget of 7.5 million, and it's a percentage that will be applied to whatever the final construction amount contracts become.
My apologies. Thank you.
Additional questions?
So that little bit of math would have been really good if we had done it on this thing. So I think that would have made this stand out more. So maybe going forward, we could be a little bit more transparent in that. That would be helpful.
Okay.
Okay, any additional questions or discussion? And we have a motion and a second on this one, right?
You do.
Okay. And let me just be sure. Let's see any. Okay. Dr. Thomas, if you would take roll.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Ms. Gallagher,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Dr. Yeager,
Yes.
Dr. Dykeman, Dr. Anderson,
Yes.
Dr. Gantt,
Yes.
Attorney Hull,
Yes.
Dr. Maddox.
Yes.
Okay, so that motion passes. We will move forward to item 13.2, and this is to approve the proposed 2021 legislative agenda. Mr. Davis, have you received any additional feedback, or is there any additional information you would like to share?
No, but I would like to kind of review it for the public. If you put me on a 3-minute timer.
Ms. Palmer, can you?
A minute and a half.
Can you take care of our timing for us?
It was 1.5 minutes that you asked for me.
That is true.
And you were to
90
also
seconds.
add the
I'll
pending.
start when he starts.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to point out to our public that this is a little bit late in coming. The legislative season is 3/4 in. There's 9 days left to the session. But this is our legislative agenda. It's pretty much the same that we've had year after year. We've updated it, and hopefully this will be updated on the website. As to the needs of Title I school systems, I was asked to report any legislation related to that. There was HB 10, but did not leave committee. It would have done exactly what we're asking the legislature to do. The private school voucher program, there were 2 bills, one in the House, one in the Senate, to include 504s in private funding, public funding for private schools. HB 60 did not pass the House. It was not voted on by the total House, but a bill did pass the Senate, and is over at the House now. And so that would, if they agree, if that passes the House and the governor signs it, then 504s will then become part of this private school voucher program that the state set up a number of years ago. Nothing was done in terms of improving the quality of pre-K kindergarten by pre-K by the legislature. As to teacher recruitment, SB 88 is in play. And what that does is allow us to do less evaluation of experienced teachers and supposedly transfer that savings into mentoring new teachers. But like Mr. Gaskin said, that's like moving apples into a, I don't know. But anyway, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. The last one I will say is that where we talk about educational opportunities for the for what we call the DACA students that we teach. There was a bill that was introduced in committee, but it did not leave committee. And nothing was done as to helping folks in technical colleges get a 100% grant as opposed to a 75% grant. So that's my report. And this, if we pass it, this will be on our website and for people to preview, and hopefully we can lobby next year for some of these items. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that information and for that overview. I will open the floor for a motion.
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
that was Dr. Maddox and Dr. Yeager. Are there any questions for Mr. Davis?
I'm sorry, you said it's going to be on our district website?
There is one now that's on a district website. Unfortunately, it's 2 years old. Last year's never made it up there.
So this one replaces what's out there now?
If
Or did
it's
you say your website? I didn't understand where we would find it.
No, it is under, if you look on the Board of Education tab, it says legislative agenda on there.
All right, great.
Okay, any additional questions? All right, Dr. Thomas, if you would take roll for all in favor of approving the proposed 2021 legislative agenda.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Ms. Gallagher? Ms. Gallagher?
She's got her thumb up.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Dr. Yeager?
Yes.
Dr. Dykeman? Dr. Anderson?
Yes.
Dr. Gantt?
Yes.
Attorney Hull? Attorney Hull?
Yes.
And Dr. Maddox?
Yes.
Okay, so that motion passes. We'll move forward with item 13.3, and this is our action to approve acceptance of the Early Head Start expansion grant. Dr. Thomas, did you want to add some information, you or Dr. Higginbotham?
Yes, so Mr. Gaskins, would you or Ms. Higginbotham like to give a brief overview of this exciting news? We've been waiting and it came at a perfect time. So would one of you like to give a brief overview? Brief.
Yes, ma'am. I think Ms. Higginbotham is better situated to give the update, but I will ditto that we're very excited to provide this opportunity for our students in Clark County.
Yes, this is an opportunity. You will remember that you approved the application in the fall. It will begin, the notice of award has the first 18 months, will give us 4.4 and a little bit over for services, to begin services for an expansion to our Early Head Start program. It will, of which, 3.8 of that will be for operations, 95.3 of that will be for training and technical assistance for the new employees that will be included in that. And then it will be an ongoing grant annually for 2.5 million for operations and 63,000 for training and technical assistance to continue. But the exciting portion is this will allow us to increase services to young children who qualify for early Head Start services. So those are families who would be at or below the poverty line.
And this is a 5-year grant?
It is a 5-year grant. Just as with our Head Start and early Head Start grant, it is a non-competitive annual reapplication. So you'll see this grant come up each year, and then at the end of the 5 years, we'll have the opportunity to apply for continuation.
And I think it will allow for 128 students, I believe.
It's 112 additional early Head Start students. Yes, sir.
Fantastic.
Yes,
And
very
this is going to
exciting.
be associated with the West Broad
That would be our
renovation.
hope, and that was a component of the facilities plan, would be to include these students, expansion of early learning, and this would be our need for that West Broad campus. Yes, ma'am.
Hooray!
It's been a long time coming, and we appreciate your support, and I appreciate our team's support.
That is really awesome. We're so proud of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So
Did you
exciting.
say how many classrooms, Mrs. Higginbotham?
There'll be 16 classrooms on that site.
And what ages?
That'll be early Head Start, so they begin as early as 8 weeks through the age of 3 or 36 months.
That will definitely help with our early literacy, foundational literacy skills that we need to help advance our students. So we're so excited. We've been waiting and waiting and fingers crossed. And so I know Dr. Anderson's like, yes, we were dancing in the hall. So
I'm going to steal Dr. Yeager's words and say early learning, or that early literacy for school readiness, is the golden ticket. That's what she was typing. Yeah, it makes a huge difference, and I appreciate the board's support in recognizing the importance of those early literacy and school readiness skills. As a community, we need more seats.
Thank you so much. Wow.
But wouldn't it be nice if that was the headline on the newspaper tomorrow morning?
You got connections.
It should be the headline on the newspaper tomorrow for those watching.
Thank you for those updates. Excellent news. All right, I'll open the floor for a motion, but I can't remember if I've already done that. So
I so move.
I move.
Okay.
I second.
Okay, so that was Mr. Davis, and I think
Nope, that was Mrs. Davis.
oh, okay.
That was
Ms.
Mr. Davis.
Okay, one of the Davises for this motion, and then I think I heard Ms. Hull for the second. Or was
Yes.
it- Okay. Any additional questions or discussion? Okay. Dr. Thomas, if you would take roll for all of those in favor of approving the acceptance of the Early Head Start Expansion Grant.
Gladly. Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Ms. Gallagher,
All the yeses.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Dr. Yeager,
Yes.
Dr. Dykeman, Dr. Anderson,
Yes.
Dr. Gantt,
Yes.
Attorney Hull,
Yes.
Dr. Maddox.
Yes.
Thank you all. We're so excited.
Awesome. Thank you for your hard work in securing that funding. 13.4, this is consideration to resume in-person board meetings. Gonna just open the floor for a discussion if there's any additional information. Dr. Thomas and Dr. Thomas and Ms. Palmer, if you could just give us like a brief overview of the steps you all have taken, and then we can discuss any additional questions or concerns, and then I'll open the floor for a motion.
Yes, ma'am. So at our, I think, November meeting, and then once again at our February meeting, we had discussion regarding resuming our in-person meetings. Ms. Palmer has worked with Mr. Taylor Duke, our custodial staff, to purchase longer cords and to be able to socially distance the space where we generally meet. We've purchased PPE devices. We've purchased the stand-up thermometers so that we can do temperature checks before we come in. Am I leaving off anything, Ms. Palmer?
No, ma'am, you have not.
So we have, we think we were responsive to the feedback that we received from board members regarding mitigation measures that would make them feel more comfortable.
Dr. Thomas, Dr. Gantt, would you like me to just sort of explain why we needed to bring this to the board tonight? It was sort of I know I had a part in that.
Please.
Sure. Thank
So, yes, that's right. The board discussed it, but there was never actually a board vote. So it was really being done as an administrative matter. And since the last board discussion, there have been some questions, and at least a couple of members couldn't attend tonight in person. So one thing to be aware of is that so long as you're exercising the right to meet by video because there's been a state declared public health emergency, then, we can do this. And we've been, that emergency's been in place by executive order since almost a year ago. And continues to be in place through at least April 6th. The governor can only do it for 30 days at a time, so he has to continue renewing it. Once we're no longer taking advantage of that, however, we're back to the usual rules, which are that a board member can only participate by video or telephone in a board meeting twice per year, unless you have a written medical excuse for why you need to participate otherwise. Once you go back to in-person meeting, you're back under the old rules. And just, that was one consideration, wanted to make sure the board members know. And so that you could discuss that if you wanted to, and then do it as a board.
Excellent.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. And so it sounds like you're saying if the board takes action to go back in person, even if that is extended, we would still be under the expectations or the state rules where we would not be able to take advantage of that.
Right. So you'd have to have a quorum, at least a quorum actually physically present. And then any board member who's not physically present can only do that twice during a calendar year.
Okay, thank you for that information. Additional discussion or questions for Dr. Thomas, Ms. Palmer, or Mr. Pruitt? Any questions or concerns? This would be definitely the time to ask those questions.
I have a question. Can I ask a question?
Yeah, is that Dr. Yeager?
Yes. So one of our public comments tonight commented on the opportunity for the public to read their own letters or comment in person at our live board meetings. That is not going to be the case right away. Is that correct? And how are we going to handle the public comments?
It was my initial understanding that we would receive public comments as we have during the pandemic, and they would be read by members of the board. That was my understanding, but I could be wrong.
That's my understanding as well. Mr. Pruitt, are there any legal implications for continuing to read the public comments as we have?
No, I don't think so. There is this fairly new state statute that says you are required to have a public comment period, but it doesn't specify how you take those comments.
Okay, thanks. So yeah, Dr. Yeager, that was my understanding. But other thoughts, feedback, questions about that?
I saw one of the commission meetings where they had, and I don't remember, I thought that they were having people come in like before their meeting and record their comments, and then they will play it back during the public comment session. So that may be a potential possibility if that's something we care to do, to allow people to speak in their own voice. So again, their voice would be reading the letters instead of you having to do them. That might be a possibility for us as well. again, that adds new work to the staff. So I'm not trying to create new work opportunities and increase our head count, but I think that does give us some leeway there in terms of trying to meet the needs of the public.
Could people submit comment electronically, like take a video on their phone or record themselves on their computer? Is that an option? No, we could play them.
Or even add into that, could we host a Zoom some type of way and record the comments one by one so they didn't have the burden of recording themselves and submitting?
In the absence of any tech guru, I'll just share personal experience. Videos come in all different formats, and sometimes you can play them and sometimes you can't.
Right. That would be my only concern there, but yeah, if it's a Zoom call, they've got it so that even I can do those and record them and play them back.
The problem with the Zoom is we can't have live stream going on with a video camera and a Zoom going live stream at the same time.
Okay. No worries, just some thoughts. I don't think we have to solve it tonight, but especially if what we're doing is still legal and meets our needs, but just some thoughts. From my perspective.
Okay, additional thoughts. So it sounds like, Mr. Pruitt, when we get ready to take action on this, we can, if we continue to have the video, the comments read, that'll be fine. And then if at some point we decide to change that, that'll be fine as well, so long as there's an opportunity for public comment.
I think so, that's right.
Okay.
Is the plan to have people come back and attend the meeting, the public? Because we would be at reduced capacity if you do that.
From my understanding, that is not the plan. The plan, from my understanding, was to live stream the meetings so that the public still has access to the meetings and the information, but not to start off with having the public back at the meetings, with the understanding that that could change. As people feel safer, or as the board determines that they're ready to take the next step. From my understanding, the thing that we know, of course, is that we have to have meetings, and then that we have to have the public comments, and that we need to take action. And that once we do that, we won't be able to go back to the virtual option.
Well, you said we won't be able to.
And I think that this is for our board meetings, correct? I think Dr. Maddox or Dr. Thomas, these would not be for committee meetings.
I'm not, I don't remember us really talking about committee meetings.
Yeah, I can't. I don't.
About committees.
Oh, what was that?
I didn't recall us discussing a return for committee meetings yet.
Okay.
So if I can just ask the elephant in the room, as I recall, our recorded meetings a year and a half ago were often, people complained about they couldn't hear us, they couldn't really see us, we were far away, mumble, mumble, mumble. I haven't heard any of those complaints about our Zoom meetings. And so I'm just concerned that we're going to go back to this open room and we're all going to mumble into our masks, and we're going to actually transmit less information with this technique, all in the name of meeting in person, when the public can't join us to meet with us in person, which is kind of the goal of meeting in person. So I'm just trying to figure out, why are we doing this right now?
Oh, no, I kind of think that we have to address what a lot of parents are saying, right? So like, if it's safe to return the kids to school, then why is the board still meeting virtually? Not saying that I have a position for or against, but I think that is what the question is for a lot of different people. It's a question of safety, safe for the students, why not safe for us?
That was going to be my response. I think that's where the conversation initiated, because we had received some feedback in some of our public comment that it seems that we were prioritizing the health of the board, but not prioritizing the health of students and staff.
I can't remember where I saw it at, but I think there was some additional equipment. I don't know if it will even change the quality significantly, but if I'm not mistaken, I think it may have been in one of our updates, or maybe just a different communication about some additional cords and maybe hardware that had been purchased. Dr. Thomas and Ms. Palmer, am I making that up? Very well possible.
Right. Mr. Duke was purchasing additional cords just to increase the length so that he could support the equipment we already had. We do need better sound equipment, but that equipment, unfortunately, needs to be equipment that's permanent. And we can't do that as long as we're in a board space that has to be broken down and put up each meeting, because we're currently in a space that is reserved for students during the day. And so to have the equipment that we really need something that can be permanently installed. And that's what we've been waiting on to improve the sound.
Okay.
I'm just, Madam President.
Yes, Mr. Davis.
Yeah, I'm definitely in support of this motion. One suggestion I have, because I do think that, I mean, I have poor pronunciation to begin with, and when I talk through a mask, I think it's probably worse. If we had shields where people would feel comfortable hearing me speak, not that, you know, with my mask down, and then I could raise it when I was done. That might be a way to increase the clarity.
No.
Nope.
Absolutely not. No. You
No.
produce aerosols with your voice that will travel everywhere. A screen will not prevent them from traveling. So no way. No, no, no. Sorry.
Then I have to agree with Dr. Yeager. Those screens are not effective at all.
They really look good.
It's called
All right,
COVID
so,
theater.
Yeah. That's exactly.
To move us forward, we need to make a decision one way or the other. Mr. Pruitt gave us some updates. Some rationale for why we had this on our agenda. Dr. Thomas and Ms. Palmer gave us some updates. There have been some additional questions and concerns. I am going to open the floor for a motion if I haven't already. I don't think I have. I'm sorry, my memory is fading a little bit.
We don't have a motion yet.
Okay.
I will make that motion that we commence with person-to-person board meetings next month.
I second.
And
Okay.
to clarify, that's only applicable to full board meetings and not to committee meetings. Is that right?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay, so that was Mr. Davis for the motion, and I'm sorry.
Ms. Gallagher. Ms. Gallagher for the second.
Ms. Gallagher for the second. Additional discussion. All right, Dr. Thomas, if
Yes,
you would take roll.
Yes, Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Ms. Gallagher,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Dr. Yeager,
No.
Dr. Dykeman, Dr. Anderson,
Yes.
Dr. Gantt,
Yes.
Attorney Hull,
Yes.
Dr. Maddox.
Yes.
All right, so that motion passes to resume in-person board meetings, and those are our board meetings only. we are at item 14, 14.1, which is adjournment. The floor is open.
No move.
Ms. Hall, and I think that was Dr. Maddox for the second, or Ms. Davis?
That was me.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
You can have it, Karina.
Ms. Davis. I don't see any objections or concerns, so we will be adjourned.